This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today. I'm your host, Jay Scott, and I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field experiencing God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have a special episode with Nicolai Caviglia. Nicolai is the owner of Deadeye Outfitters, and I'm proud to announce that Deadeye Outfitters is actually going to be a new sponsor for the J. Scott Outdoors podcast, and I'm excited to have Nicolai on. Nicolai, how are you doing?
Doing well, Jay. How are you?
Oh, doing pretty good. What made you think you wanted to sponsor the podcast?
Well, I'm a big fan of it. I started listening to it right after you started it, and I'm a big fan of podcasts, and yours caught my interest because you had some really great guests, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you do a really good job with it, so I jumped on the opportunity to be a part of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to form a partnership with Deadeye Outfitters and really appreciate your support, and it's going to be exciting to be able to go through the next couple months and get to see what Deadeye Outfitters is all about. Why don't you explain to my listeners, what is Deadeye Outfitters?
So Deadeye Outfitters is just a brand for hunters, by hunters. We produce mainly apparel at this stage in the game, T-shirts, hats, hooded sweatshirts, pretty much any lifestyle apparel that you can think of. And I came upon a pretty good opportunity a long time ago and seized it. So
that's awesome. And where are you based out of, Nicolai?
We're based out of Reno, Nevada, which makes it nice because we've got a lot of really big suppliers around here for the manufacturing and what have you. So we got a really good industry here in Reno, so that helps the Deadeye business quite a bit.
Before we get into the individual products and such that Deadeye provides, I know you're a big hunter. Tell me about your hunting background and how that led you to starting Deadeye and how the passion of hunting, kind of drives your business.
Yeah, so, like a lot of people, my dad instilled it in me. I was born and raised in Ely, Nevada. For those of you that don't know, it's right on the Utah border, just straight west of Reno, and it's a desolate place. So there really isn't a whole lot to do out there except for chase big deer and elk. And, growing up out there, my dad had my brother and I out there as early as he could. I can't remember a time when I wasn't out in the hills. And he created the monsters that my brother and I have turned into be. He would start out every morning and put a bounty on deer, elk. So $1 for the biggest, $1 for the most, and $1 for the first. And so my brother being, 3 years apart, we were super competitive. So we would, we hit the hills pretty hard trying to find the biggest, the most, and the first. And little did he know he was going to create monsters.
The area around Ely, I have not been to Ely myself. What is the terrain like there, and is it, I know it's renowned for great elk hunting, but tell me a little bit about that area.
It's pretty high elevation. The valley floor where Ely's at is 6,500 feet or thereabouts, and we've got some pretty high elevation mountains around there up to the second highest peak in the state's 13.3, I believe, right around there. And a bunch of really long mountain ranges that run, 70, 80 miles, and they get up to about 11,000 feet. So we've got everything from the pinyon juniper all the way up to the aspens, the big pines, and then the above the timberline stuff as well. And it's, we've had the big elk. I grew up with all the elk there, with all the giants that everybody was pulling out of there in the 90s and early 2000s, and even today. But mainly the big critters around there are the deer and the elk. We have antelope. That side of the state's really not known for producing big antelope. Just south of there, you can run into desert sheep, and a little ways west or east towards the Utah border, you'll find a herd of Rockies as well that are huntable. on Mount Moriah, and that's just north of the Great Basin National Park. So it's pretty much everything. You've got, a lot of mountain mahogany hunting. So it's a lot of open, big country.
If you could only hunt one animal around your neck of the woods, what animal would it be?
For me, that's a tough question. It's a tie between desert sheep and mule deer. But I'd have to say mule deer. They're just the gray ghost, and they're the ones that haunt my dreams still. I've had worse luck hunting mule deer and seen, just had a lot more fun hunts at least hunting mule deer than anything else.
I know you've shot some great mule deer. What is your biggest mule deer that you've harvested, Nicolai?
The best buck I've killed was just last year. Is 201 and 4/8 gross and 197 net. Non-typical. He was a pretty neat buck. He about 190-inch main frame, and then he had an inline off his main beam on the right side and a cheater off his G3 on the right side. And the left side he had about a 4-inch point right off the base. Is actually a fourth antler, or he has 4 antlers actually. He's a point of one antler that goes right underneath his base, about 4.5 inches forward, and then one that kicks off back behind his base that's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches long as well.
What kind of frame? How wide is he?
He's just under 30, so 29 and some change. And
nice.
Yeah.
What year was that? What hunt?
That was last year with the muzzleloader. Was
they rutting? Or?
No, it was early season, September muzzleloader. The muzzleloader hunts here in Nevada are right after or most of them are right after the archery season. So I believe my hunt started September 5th and went a couple weeks, or went the whole month of September.
Was that a buck you'd been watching, or did you just hunt him up and find him and kill him?
I hunted him up and found him. When I drew that tag, I drove from Reno to Ely, which is about 324 miles. I did that drive about 6 or 7 weekends scouting, and didn't turn him up until opening day is when I found him. I had found a couple really big bucks, and at the same time the archery elk hunt's going on, so there was a lot of people in there, a lot of competition, and nobody really scouting for deer. It's just mainly you got 10 or 12 people for each archery elk tag you had. So I kind of changed game plans 3 days before the hunt and went just somewhere that I knew held deer, could produce big deer, and just kind of wanted to get away from the people. And lo and behold, 15 minutes after first light, he showed his face, and I ended up missing him opening day.
Oh man, that was probably a heartbreaker.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a weird story. We have to use iron sights here in Nevada on a muzzleloader, so before the season started, I went for my annual eye checkup and found out that I've got a little bulge in one of my eye lenses, and it doesn't allow me to see hard, crisp, sharp edges with my right eye. And for someone who's right eye dominant, that doesn't work that well. So
yeah.
The muzzleloader setup that I shoot is a peep sight in the back that's adjustable for elevation, and then the front is a globe with a really fine crosshair in it, which allows you to shoot 300 yards really well with open sight muzzleloader. And so I shot left-handed all summer. I taught myself how to shoot left-handed with that gun so I could see the front sights, and I was proficient out to 300 yards. And opening day, when that buck stepped out, instinct kicked in, and I didn't have much time. Dropped down to one knee, put the gun on a tripod, and pulled the trigger. And my elevation was already set for 200 yards. And after the smoke cleared, I see the dust floating up by his feet, and I realized that I shot the gun right-handed.
Oh man!
And that's when I did one of those face palm, forehead slaps, and
that we've all done.
Oh yeah, it was just one of those moments that just straight instinct, hunting my entire life right-handed and just shouldering that gun in those situations, instinct just took over. And so I watched the buck run over the ridge and did the low head walk back to the truck and went out.
The walk of shame.
Exactly. And drug myself off the mountain and went out in the flats and shot a couple times left-handed just to be sure I was still on, and built some confidence again. And I was hunting by myself too. I did most of my scouting and my hunting by myself. And the next day I didn't turn him up, turned up another decent buck, but passed him up. And then actually watched a bobcat stalk a group of 4 bucks for about an hour. Wish I had my video camera, but didn't get it done. And that was pretty neat. And so then that evening my dad came down, the second night of the hunt, my dad came down to join me. And the third morning we woke up late. Everything was going wrong. No radios didn't work. It was too late. It was just getting first light right when I popped out of camp. And so we hustled to get where I wanted to go, and couldn't split up with my dad, couldn't cover more ground because I didn't have any way to communicate with him. And it's just big flat country where I was. So he stuck with me, and I just got lucky. I hiked up on this knob where the basin he had traveled into, and I no longer got to the top of the knob and set my pack down and looked up, and he was 400 yards in front of me.
Was he feeding, or did he know you were there?
He heard some noise. Like we did a pretty good job sneaking in there. He had heard something, but he was looking down the canyon. He wasn't looking anywhere near us, and so I just had my dad sit there, and I just bailed and got in a little pocket that he couldn't see me, and I ran up and got 280 yards from him, and the sun pinned me down on a kind of an open ridge, and I couldn't get any closer without dropping down and losing sight of him. So I just kind of set up and waited for him to feed. He fed out into an opening, and just hammered him, double lunged him at 280 with the muzzleloader, and that was it.
Left-handed.
Left-handed, yeah.
Has your eye? Have you been able to repair your eye, or is that going to be something that you'll be dealing with now for the rest of your life?
It's repairable. I just haven't had time to get it done naturally. But yeah, I've talked to a couple different people. They'll be able to repair it. So right now It's shooting left-handed.
Yeah. And how have you found, other than that situation where you rushed and shot right-handed? I mean, I haven't really thought of teaching yourself to shoot left-handed. Tell me a little bit about the transition and how that went.
It was a pretty easy transition. Nothing really jumps out at me as far as being difficult. I think the first couple times just situating yourself and getting used to, grabbing the gun backwards, apparently, like right arm on the forearm. It seemed kind of weird. But I got comfortable after about the third or fourth time out to where it wasn't a big deal. It's just I never expected to have that reaction on the hill.
Yeah, I mean, your normal instinct would kick in, and it would be hard to probably go to something that you would, you trained yourself to do as opposed to just instinct where you just automatically, it'd be like shooting a basketball and you practice left-handed, but, all of a sudden you get thrown in the game, you're probably going to throw it up right-handed just because you that's what you're used to. So mule deer is your love. I know you've shot some nice elk as well. Tell me about this 5-point. I saw a picture of a big 5-point that you shot.
Yes. So when I was 19, I was lucky enough to draw a Nevada elk tag, and back then they really didn't have. This was in 2002. They really didn't have a lot of tags, and it was still just one season. I unfortunately was in college, and so I couldn't devote a whole lot of time to scouting. So my dad he still lives over in Ely, so he was doing a lot of scouting for us, and my brother and I would run over on the weekends and do what we could. And luckily we'd hunted enough elk in that area to where we kind of had a good basis of where we should hunt, where we should look without just growing up in the area. So I ended up my dad picked up that bull. We'd found that bull the year before, and he wasn't busted, and he was about 380 the year before. And when my brother found him, he was deer hunting, and he just reached down and picked up a piece of broken elk antler, and he's looking at it, and he walks around a tree, and that big bull was the big 6-point's just standing there about 300 yards, and so he named him the Broken Horn Bull, and never could find him. My brother had a tag that same year, or the year before mine, and we couldn't find him in my brother's season, and so my brother killed a really nice 7x5, and then when I drew the tag, my brother told my dad to kind of keep an eye out for that big 6-point, because we knew he hadn't been killed. So.
And Nicolai, just to rehash here, is this a November hunt?
Yeah, this is the late season,
okay.
November 1st starting date, I believe, or somewhere thereabouts, the first week in November.
Okay.
And so my dad goes out and finds that bull and calls me and tells me and says, I got good news and bad news. I found your giant bull. I said, well, what's the bad news? He goes, well, he's busted. I said, how bad? He goes, about 40 inches busted. So then, your heart drops and you think about it. But he goes, yeah, you might want to look at him anyways. And so we did. We went out there the next weekend. I picked him up, and he was just a giant. He had 22-inch bezzes, 19 and a half, 19 and 3 on the thirds, 24.5-inch royals. 1/5 is 18 and a half. The other one's 15. And just watching him walk around with just, dang near 20s everywhere, I made my mind up the weekend before the season started that if I had a chance opening morning that he's gonna hit the dirt. And as luck would have it, we found him opening morning, and I was able to get it done. 534-yard shot, and that was it. Kind of quick hunt, but unfortunately we didn't know it, but my brother jinxed him the year before when he named him a broken horn bull, because the next year he just happened to break off both of his brow tines, and you couldn't even get an inch out of his brow tines.
Really?
Yeah. So
and he went 350 as it sat.
As a 5 point, he's 350 and 3/8
with broken eye guards.
Broken brow tines. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a big bull, and I got a lot of guff for shooting a broken bull from a bunch of my buddies over there, but he looks good on the wall. He's unique. You don't see, he's not busted anywhere besides his brow tine, so just kind of different looking elk. But
well, that's cool. It sounds like a great animal, and your love for sheep hunting. Where did that start, and what adventure has that taken you on?
Well, for the sheep hunting, I kind of got started late on sheep just because it's so hard to draw in Nevada. But when after hanging out with Chris Lacey for a little bit after I met him doing Deadeye, we started getting together with Victor Clark, and then you'd know somebody that drew a tag, and so I got invited out on a couple sheep hunts with some of the heavy hitter sheep hunters in Nevada, Victor Clark and Victor Trujillo and Chris Lacey. And so the first sheep hunt I ever went on was, I think it was 2009. We went to the Bears, which is probably one of the number one units in Nevada, Unit 253. And went in there, and we ended up killing a 176-inch ram, 38 on each side, or 36 and 38 with 15 and some change on the bases, and just an absolute giant Nevada ram. And so I got spoiled there. And ever since then, I've been able to hunt almost every year with somebody, whether it's a friend or going down and helping my brother guide or doing something like that. And it's been a blast. My dad was actually lucky enough to draw in 2011, and he drew a pretty unique unit that produces big rams that it's called the Stonewalls, and you actually get to go on the test site, the famous Area 51 Air Force Base test site, and you have to go through a training class because you're actually on an old active test site. So you will see missiles, you will see bombs, you will see all sorts of stuff, and if you see something metal, just don't touch it and don't pick anything up and don't take anything off the site. And so that was pretty neat because we did see Sidewinder missiles sitting across the canyon from us, and we learned, my brother and I learned, and my dad learned a really good lesson that year on sheep hunting is they're extremely difficult to judge sometimes. Opening morning, we had a group of about 5 or 6 really good guys down there hunting with my dad, and we split up, and my dad and my brother and a good buddy of ours named Slade Sanborn went up on top of this mountain, and I went around the one north side of it with Chris, and couldn't find anything good that day, so we go meet back up at camp, and my brother has video of a ram that they passed today, and I looked at it, and instantly I knew he was, a big ram, like 170. His mass was insane, and my brother watched this, and my dad watched this ram at 300 yards for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours. and he just looked short. He just dropped and he stopped, just straight down.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't tip up at all, and just looked like he was about 30 inches long. And so they were going back and forth on the mountain whether he was big enough or not, and they decided to pass. Well, Chris Lacey looked at the video, and he's looked at a lot more sheep than us, and he told him, he goes, "Would you pass a Boone and Crockett typical mule deer opening morning?" My brother's like, "No." He goes, "Then why would you pass up a Boone and Crockett sheep opening morning?" So, you start thinking about stuff like that. And so we ended up trying to go back in there, and we're hunting next to our good buddy Victor Trujillo, who's probably one of the most proficient Nevada guides there is right now for desert sheep. And so we woke up and got out of camp, and those guys had beat us to the trailhead, and so we asked them which way to go. They were going, and they went up on top, and we had to go across the canyon and watch them shoot that ram from opening morning. And Todd Jasic was his client, and they killed it. And I believe I want to say it netted 174 and 5/8.
Oh.
So that was a heartbreaker, and it's on the cover of Great Rams 3, I believe, that book. Okay. So yeah, that was a heartbreaker. But we didn't know. We were kind of rookies at sheep, and when we got back to camp and looked at the ram, Victor Trujillo walked over and told us, if it was a deer or elk, you guys would have known, but you guys haven't looked enough rams yet. So, and I think that's the biggest thing with sheep hunting is just getting a look at rams and looking over tons and tons of rams just to kind of get an idea, because they are extremely tough to judge at times.
Yeah, they absolutely can be. And, you have a ram that's got a lot of mass. It hides length. Several of the big ones that I've been around, when you're plugging in numbers and trying to estimate and field judge them, a lot of times you can't get yourself to really, say what you think the ram is, just because, for my sake, I don't want to be over ever. But definitely if you've got a ram with a lot of mass, a lot of times mass can hide length and appear short. But you also have to watch that, the ram's not by himself and he appears like he's got a lot of mass and he really is short. So there is a lot of fine little intricate things, and certainly looking at a bunch of rams is the best way to make sure you can field judge. And it is neat, though, to have a lesson like that. And even though it was a hard lesson to learn, that probably will never happen to you again. But, on your not knowing your brother, but, speaking about what he did, if he wasn't sure and he had a tag in his pocket, or your dad, and didn't shoot it, that's still okay, because, he didn't want to do something and make a mistake. So, it's something that every hunter goes through. And then did your dad end up shooting a ram?
Yeah, so 2 days after that, we watched Todd hammer that ram. We ended up killing a really nice ram for my dad. He grosses right at 170 and nets 169 and 4, I believe. And he had the exact same shape as Todd's ram, same bases, same length, and same first quarter measurements. The only thing that Todd's had on his was, I believe my dad's last quarter measurement was a 9 and some change, and Todd's ram was like 11 and a half on his last quarter. So he just baseball bats down there low. So it was a fun hunt. Everybody got to watch my dad hit the ram or shoot the ram, and we were all right there on top of him. We all hiked back in there and got it all on video, and it was pretty neat. After my dad hit the ram, there's another good, maybe mid-160s ram there with him. They didn't know what was going on, and my dad heart shot him, and he was just kind of up on his feet waiting to tip over, and the other ram just reared back, and they butted heads probably about 30 seconds after my dad shot, and after they butted heads, my dad's ram tipped over, and that 160 ram just stood over him like, yeah, I'm the man now. It was kind of fun.
Who's the boss now?
Exactly. He had no idea what was going on, but it was pretty funny. It was a good video. But yeah, watching my dad walk up on that ram was a pretty awesome feeling. I got some actual photos of him when he walked up to the ram, and that's a moment I'll never forget.
That's awesome. Well, it's been great talking to you about all these different hunts, and it's obvious that you live and breathe hunting. I want to talk to you a little bit about Deadeye Outfitters, and basically how does Deadeye Outfitters operate? How did it get started? What is the concept behind Deadeye Outfitters, and And just talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, Deadeye basically got its roots, I want to say about 10 years ago. I was working for another brand locally here in Reno, and I just helped a buddy kill a pretty good buck, and Chris Lacey, who I'd never met at this point, came over to our shop to score it. And so, working in the clothing industry and being a hunter, I kind of started thinking that there really wasn't much out there that for clothing lines in the hunting industry. And mind you, this was 2005, so there's more now, but back then there really wasn't. And so I got a hold of Chris again, and we started working out some ideas. And those next 3 years, from 2005 to 2009, nothing really worked out right. We had a bad partnership with a couple of guys we worked with, and then we had trademark issues once we got everything settled there, and Chris and I were together, and we got trademark issues. And so we, start moving forward, and then we take 10 steps back and 5 steps forward and 10 steps back. And finally in 2009, Chris's brother-in-law approached him, and Chris and I were kind of still in on the idea, but we just weren't sure how hot and heavy we were, because those 3 years had pretty much just wore us out. And Chris's brother-in-law came to us and said, hey, I want to do it. You guys need to stay going with this, because you guys have a really good idea. And so we got teamed up, and there's actually 4 owners of Deadeye. It's Chris Lacey, the wildlife artist, and like world-renowned wildlife artist. He's insane what that guy can draw. I've got another partner named Jason Williams, who's Chris's brother-in-law, Jason's younger brother, Brian Williams, and myself. And in 2009 was when we got everything formed as far as the business and trademarks, and we made sure everything was A-okay before we ever dove into it. So we have a bunch of trademarks with the name Deadeye, and then we started running with it. And basically the vision that I had, even in 2005, was I wanted to paint hunters in a good light. It seemed to me that every brand or every T-shirt you saw that was hunting related was kind of the redneck, blood sport, get her done type, brands. They were fuel for anti-hunters, not, making us look good to anti-hunters or to non-hunters for that fact, So I wanted to change that. I wanted to use Chris's art and kind of build a brand that a hunter could be proud to wear. Something with a deer that wasn't 700 inches like most of the people designed to make them stand out on a shirt. Something that was like a 210-inch buck or 400-inch bull. Something that was realistic. With art.
So in other words, you wanted to bring real life character to your product, meaning, show a buck with kickers and stuff, but not not just crazy that just doesn't even look right. You wanted it to look classy and look real tight.
Exactly. I wanted it to look legit. I wanted it to look clean and crisp, and Chris is able to draw whatever I ask him. I do all the graphic design for the company, so I'll ask Chris to draw me a desert sheep skull, head on or profile or do this, and he'll whip it up, and it's frustrating to watch him draw as an artist. And before I met Chris, I actually told him when I first met him, I said, I used to poach all of your art when I was a kid. I literally would. I'd see Chris's art in an Eastman's or a Trophy Hunter magazine, and I would just redraw it in my style. And so it was kind of funny. Chris and I got along really well. We both have kind of smart aleck personalities, and we aren't afraid to say what we think. So Chris and I got along real well from the beginning, and we can kind of work together. And we've got a formula now on how the art needs to be drawn and on what paper and what's easiest to get scan into the computer, and we work together really well on those fronts, and we both like the same things. I mean, we're both diehard hunters, and I think Chris is famously quoted saying, "It would be easier to list the animals I don't want to kill than the ones I do, or the animals I don't want to hunt." So, and I'm there with him, and we always, it's always an adventure almost every day at the shop, because you never know who's going to show up with a big bull or big buck or big ram for Chris to score. And so it's been pretty good working with him and his art. So
Yeah, I mean, Chris is not only a Boone and Crockett scorer, but I mean, he does big murals for Cabela's. He's done, pretty much every wildlife painting that you can imagine, and his work is, unbelievable. And he's got a incredible reputation for being a phenomenal artist. So that's a great deal that you've got him on the team. Tell me a little bit, from the start with Deadeye, what you guys might have started out with as products and how that product line has grown over the years here.
And I was actually just talking to my partner Brian about this the other day. We were laughing actually because when we started, we had maybe 6 T-shirt designs and no hats, and we thought we were the big man on campus, and it was just kind of funny. We really didn't have much when we started. We were working out of a basement garage basically, and over the years it's evolved into. Right now I have like a 56 or 58 page catalog that we send off to the wholesalers that have all of our product that we offer to the chain stores and the mom and pop stores, and it's evolved quite a bit. We went from just doing T-shirts and hoodies to having our own hats manufactured with our specific materials that we want to. We're in the process of getting prototypes built of board shorts and walking shorts and bikinis and pretty much anything lifestyle that you would wear, that any hunter or anything would wear. I believe we're going to start coming out with socks this fall or next spring, and we're going to be doing kind of a deal where for every pair of socks we buy, we donate percentage of proceeds to, we haven't figured it out yet, but some organization or some charity of our choice. And, just watching the growth over the years, from a basement garage to, we've got a nice little sized warehouse in Sparks now in Reno.
Awesome. And how do you go about in the design process sounds like you're quite the artist yourself, but how do you take a concept and push it all the way through to the final product?
That's a tough question because I kind of I just start throwing stuff at it. Like I'll have Chris draw up a big mule deer skull. I was working on a 2016 design last night, and so I'll give you an idea with that process. So I had Chris draw up a big mule deer skull for me, and I kind of knew basically what I wanted to do with it. But once you start working in the Illustrator programs, the Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshops, you start realizing, well, that may look cool, but it may not work on a T-shirt, because that's, just because it looks good on a piece of paper doesn't mean it'll translate well on a T-shirt if it's, just the ratios are off or something's off on how it lays on the shirt. So I'll play around with it and throw it on T-shirt templates and just kind of add elements to it until I'm happy with it. But basically, I'll kind of have an idea of a design before I go at it. I'll kind of know the direction I want to go, know the colors of the shirts I'm going to be working with, because that'll affect the design a bunch, whether I need to have contrasting elements. These elements need to contrast versus those elements, and how can I use that T-shirt color to contrast through the art as well. That way it keeps the print colors down. So it's taken me a good 10 years of self-taught computer graphics to figure out, have a decent idea of how to do it.
Awesome. And what do you have coming up? I know you've been working on a lot of new products and new designs. When is that going to launch, and what can you say about that?
Well, we've got, I believe this, we've got a bunch of new products that'll be coming out in July, a bunch of new hats. And it's funny because in the beginning we didn't have any hats, and now I bet one of our number one selling items is our hats. And we've got a pile of new hats and new hat designs that nobody's ever seen hitting in July this year. We'll have 4 or 5 new T-shirt designs, I believe, hitting in July as well. And those are just for our online store. So those will be available to everybody who wants to shop in our online store. Another thing we've got going on that's pretty big is we actually we are the licensing partner with Boone and Crockett, and we do all of Boone and Crockett's apparel and lifestyle apparel as well. We've got a full line of Boone and Crockett T-shirts and hats and sweatshirts, and that's actually working really well. I'm really excited to be involved with them because they are hunting in North America. You know, they are the original conservation organization that kind of set this country apart as far as how to conserve our wildlife. I always just basically thought that Boone and Crockett was just the scoring system, and you know, there's just kind of a benchmark for the North American animals. But once you dive in to find out how much money and effort that Boone and Crockett puts back into the wildlife and what the origins of Boone and Crockett actually were, it's really impressive. And I think a lot of people forget about that. So when you purchase one of the Boone and Crockett T-shirts, that money's going back to Boone and Crockett. You know, we've got a pretty good deal with them to where, you know, they came to us and they saw what we did and they believed the same as us that, you know, my vision of portraying the hunters and the animals in a good light was why Boone and Crockett approached us and said, hey, we want you guys to, you know, do this for us. And I think it's going to be a really, really good partnership to have.
That's awesome. Yeah, that can be really big for you. Where can people see, when will they get to see the new designs, and what is the best way for people to learn about the Deadeye Outfitters products?
So our website is deadeyeoutfitters.com, and that's where you can go online and shop. We've got the Boone and Crockett brand has its own page up there to where you can shop just Boone and Crockett apparel. We've got the Deadeye page up there to where you can shop all the men's, women's apparel that we sell for Deadeye, the hats. And then as far as any of the new products or new releases, I run all the social media for Deadeye as far as Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And anytime we've got a new product or we're launching a new product, it'll be up on the social media sites the day it launches. So, you know, we get or relaunches, because we'll have a lot of stuff sell out. It's at a tough point right now because we're growing so fast that we'll produce a bunch of hats and we kind of underestimate sometimes what we'll sell, and some of our product sells out immediately within a day or two, and it's a good problem to have. But then our return, we have to have them manufactured and got brought back to us, so there can be some delays in some of the products, and not back ordered by any means. We don't. Anytime the product sells out, it's not available on the website, so we really rarely have any back orders. But we get a lot of people asking if, you know, this hat's going to be available again, or this T-shirt, and a lot of times they will be. And so I post a couple times a day on social media, and any time that something's brought back into stock or some new product, it's always on the Instagram or Facebook or Twitter.
Awesome. And on those, your handles, Deadeye Outfitters,
yep.
I know on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter the same?
All the same thing, Deadeye Outfitters.
Yeah, I noticed you have a very big following on Instagram, and that's just directly attributed to the amount of work that you put in and the cool content that you put up. So I want to commend you on having that following. What kind of feedback do you get from your supporters?
Oh, it's insane. Honestly, Jay, if you'd have told me, you know, when I was 15 years old that this would be what I was doing, I'd probably laugh in your face. I mean, I still to this day can't. It's just exciting to see someone wearing a product that I designed. Walking through the Denver airport a couple of years back and saw a guy wearing one of our Mule Deer T-shirts, and just kind of smiled, and I was wearing a Deadeye hat, and we crossed paths, and he kind of gave a nod, but I never want to be the guy that's out there bragging it up or saying, hey, I own that company or I do this. I try to be humble about it, and if somebody wants to talk to me about it, then I'll talk about it. But it's really exciting how the company's developed, and all our social media. One thing I really like about our social media is most of the pictures you see on there, like the deer, elk, or sheep, are taken by myself or Chris or my brother or people that are in our core group. We really don't post every big buck photo you see online or every big bull photo that people just kind of recycle through and you see every page posting. naturally, if somebody sends me a photo of them wearing Deadeye with their big buck or them wearing Deadeye shooting their bow, I'll post that up too, because it builds credibility to the brand that, these guys are out there wearing it. So I take pride in the Instagram following, especially because we've built that off of our brand, our photos, and our fans, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting, and I'm thumbing through your Instagram account right now, and just some phenomenal trophies on here, and there's some pretty cool photos. There's actually pictures of famous people wearing your stuff, which is kind of cool. I see here there looks like an Ultimate Fighter here wearing your product not too long ago as he was getting weighed in. That's kind of cool, and Stone Cold Steve Austin wearing, and so I'm sure as an owner, it's probably awesome to see some of those people doing that.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, I get people all the time saying that they see Stone Cold wearing it, which is neat. And he's actually a friend of he's our friend's brother-in-law. So we kind of tied in with Steve, and I did some T-shirt designs for him, and that worked out really well for us because Steve Austin loves the brand. And to say that I've been able to talk to Steve Austin is pretty insane, coming from a little kid from Ely, Nevada. It still blows my mind that we've been able to take it this far, just based off of T-shirts. It's a tough industry. Like, we don't have the hard good products, or we don't have the technical gear like, say, the Kuiu that I wear hunting. I mean, I love that brand, and it's a little bit easier to sell the technical stuff when you've got such a great product, and it's a lot harder to sell somebody on a name or a brand like the Deadeye brand. So the fact that we've been able to get so many fans and followers out there of our brand, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting, and to think that you guys have built this from a small little in the garage company to as big as it is now, and being able to provide the content and the material and stuff that you do with all the different products is phenomenal, and it's a testament to how hard you guys are working. And I want you to tell my listeners a little bit about the J. Scott discount code that you guys are going to be offering as a part of the sponsorship for the Deadeye Outfitters on the J. Scott Outdoors podcast.
So when we approached Jay about sponsorship, he said he was right on board, and he loved our product. So that made us even happier that we could get somebody that actually believed in the product as well. So what we did is for all the followers of the podcast, and we've offered you guys a 10% off coupon. The coupon code you put in during checkout is J Scott, just like his name, JAYSCOTT, and it'll save you 10% on anything you purchase in the store, whether it's Boone & Crockett or Deadeye, or the Cole Whitt brand, which I can get into a second, or the Signature Series stuff for Cole Whitt. So what that will also match anytime we do a sale. So if we do a 4th of July sale and we do a 20% off, his coupon code will match those codes as well. And what it does is it gives Jay a bit of payback too. So every purchase you guys do on the website with his promo code, Jay will actually get a piece of that to keep his podcast going. Because that's a big thing. We want to make sure the J. Scott podcast lasts. I mean, I truly enjoy listening to it, and the guests that you bring on, and the caliber and quality of guests that you bring on is tremendous. You got some of the biggest names in Western hunting on the podcast, and I want to be able to hear it for a long time. So anything we can do to help it going is what we're here for.
Yeah, that type of support is it's really easy for me every day to be energized and fired up about producing a new episode and contacting people to be on the podcast, and the support that I've gotten from the listeners, quite honestly, is it's just humbling. I mean, when I started this back in the middle of March, I really had no idea where I was going with it, other than I wanted to educate and inform the hunters and fishermen out there. And, it led me to think of how many people in the industry that I do know and have a personal relationship with. And a lot of those people have really stepped up. And, there hasn't been a single person that has, not wanted to come on and take part of the podcast. And it's very humbling, and I've had great support from the listeners, and I'm excited to have Deadeye Outfitters on board as one of my sponsors, and I want to thank you for supporting my podcast. And why don't you go ahead and tell me about the Cole Whitt signature series, and anything else that you have coming up in the future here that the listeners need to be watching for.
Basically, Cole Whitt's just a friend of ours that races NASCAR. He races the Cup Series, and he does pretty well. And so we did our own. He's a huge hunter, so we did a signature series Cole Whitt design and we're going to keep coming out with more of his apparel. But it's kind of a cross. The T-shirt we have now is kind of a cross between some motorsports, some gearhead stuff, and hunting. It's got a couple pistons and big old whitetail skulls combined. So it's a pretty neat shirt that's selling really well. And he's just a really great, humble kid that is doing really well in NASCAR. And he just loves to be outdoors. So, we're trying to tie ourselves with people that actually truly love to be outdoors and love doing what we love to do. It makes it a lot easier to talk to people when you have common interest, and it makes it a lot easier to deal with people when you have common interest because they understand where you're coming from. So we've truly been lucky to have people like Cole or even for you, Jay, help us push our product as well. Without you guys out there, we wouldn't there wouldn't be a Deadeye Outfitters. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, that is awesome. Before we go today, I'd like you to talk about you offer men's, women's, youth, different materials. Talk a little bit about your materials in the T-shirts and in the hats, and so people realize that this is a full product and brand with a big lineup here.
Yeah, we've probably got about 40 or 50 T-shirt designs. I think we have probably close to 30 on the website right now. And most of our T-shirts are just your basic 100% cotton. We also have a lot of, we're starting to get more into the soft feel material, the blended material, like more of a performance style shirt for some of the T-shirts. And they're all real high end. We don't mess around. We use really high quality apparel for our shirts. It's 100% branded. It's not just a Hanes T-shirt that has a print on it or something like that. As far as the T-shirts go, the women's stuff, we have everything ranges from tank tops to sundresses to the T-shirts and hoodies. The youth stuff, we do have some youth T-shirts, and I need to update that. I'm glad you brought that up, Jay, because I've been meaning to get the youth stuff brought up to the par up in our website. The hats right now are one of our biggest sellers. We have some really neat hat designs now, and it's hard to keep them in stock. The materials we use on some of our hat it's one of our most popular hats, the Performance. It's 100% it's a polyester spandex mix. It's a really lightweight, comfortable, flex fit hat that I've never, when I found the material, found the hat, I've never wore anything that was as comfortable as far as hats go. And it's changed the game as far as hats for us. We sell more of those than anything else. And it's kind of funny. We got a lot of gruff or we got a lot of crap for bringing the what they call flat brim hats into the industry. And I tell people every day, it's cardboard, you can bend it. It's just because it comes from the factory not bent doesn't mean it can't be bent. And all it is it's the shape of the visor is a little bit different. But any Major League Baseball, football, basketball, any Major League sports, that is the mandatory hat that they have to wear. So if you see a Major League Baseball player with his hat bent up, it's the same visor as the quote unquote flat brim. And people have some crazy thoughts about the flat brim hat. I think it's here to stay. We sell more of those than any other hat style, by far, probably 10 to 1. And I think it's just one of those styles that the youth have today, and it's probably not going to go away. But just because that hat's offered in a flat brim style doesn't mean that you can't bend that brim and shape it to whatever shape you would like. They're all shapeable, but the brim is cardboard, so it can shape into darn near whatever you want, any shape you can get. And
it is funny to see the trends in hats. I mean, if you go back over the last 20 years, you've got basically it goes from flat to really curved to barely curved to back to flat, and so it's just a style, and it's easy for people to point a finger and say they don't like flat brim or they don't like curved brim, but the reality is it's just a hat, and it's a style, and it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And then upcoming for next year, we're going through manufacturing prototypes right now for bikinis and men's board shorts. And I developed a camo pattern last year that we've been using on some hats and stuff right now. Just basically that way I wouldn't have to pay a licensing fee to do anything like that, like the hats or the shorts or the bikinis. And I kind of wanted to have my own signature on it too. So we're calling it Contour. I'm not sure where that will ever go, if it goes anywhere. For right now, we're just using it on some T-shirt designs and some accents on hats and on T-shirts and hooded sweatshirts and stuff like that. But, the options are there. I don't know if I ever want to dive so far into the technical gear, the hunting gear, like, your Sitkas and your Kuyus. And after talking to Jason with Kuyu, that guy's he's on top of things, so it's kind of hard to compete with somebody like that when they're so far ahead of the game. So I think we're going to stick with what we know for now. But yeah, we'll have some pretty neat stuff coming out next year. We're definitely stepping up our game on hooded sweatshirts and hats once again. I'm right in the middle of the 2016 catalog and building all the 2016 product right now. So I'm chomping at the bit to get some of the stuff out there because I know it's going to look really good and I know it's going to sell well. And it's my biggest thing is when I build something really cool, I kind of want to, hey, let's get this going. I want to get it out there. I want it to start selling, but I have to, due to buying periods with the stores and all this other stuff, I kind of got to play it cool for a bit. But
I know there's things you want to tell us about, and maybe on some future podcast episodes we can talk about some of the new stuff. But I know from talking to you behind the scenes, you're chomping at the bit to get some of this stuff out there. So yeah. That's great to see the excitement. One last question, I'll let you go. What is the mystery men's and mystery women's on the T-shirt?
Website? So we've over the years, we've been able to collect and write out a lot of product, just kind of trade show use and stuff like that. And we come back. It always seems we have like a couple of each size left over in all these different shirts. And we were going through the warehouse the other day, and we just started, sorting them out. And so what the mystery men's and mysteries women's is for $5, you can buy a men's T-shirt, and you buy whatever size you wear, small, medium, large, extra large, triple X. And we'll just pull one out of the bucket and send it to you. We won't know which one it is until we pull it out of the bucket, but it's going to be probably one of the earlier designs, the first 3 or 4 years design shirts we have that we had excess inventory of, or something to that effect, or miscellaneous inventory. Say we sold all the larges and extra larges, and we had mediums and smalls left. So we're kind of a way to give back something fun for somebody to just buy a $5 T-shirt, and then when it shows up, it's kind of a surprise.
Awesome. That sounds kind of fun. Well, Nicolai, I really appreciate you being on with us today, and I want to remind the listeners when they go on Deadeye Outfitters and they order, make sure to enter the promo code JScott. And like Nicolai said, that's going to help me here at the podcast to keep this going. And I look forward to our future relationship here. And I appreciate you stepping up to be a sponsor here on the podcast. And Did you draw any hunts coming up this fall that you have to be looking forward to, or any of your friends or family?
My family got skunked this year in Nevada, so my girlfriend drew her first deer tag ever. No bonus points. Drew a late rifle deer hunt in eastern Nevada for one of the units I'm familiar with. So I'm really excited about that, to get her out there and see how she reacts to the hunting environment. She's been hunting before, but nothing like this. So we'll see how she does. And she's got a good chance of killing a pretty good buck. So that'll be exciting. And I'm jealous of my brother. He's going on a Dall sheep hunt here in a month, so that should be fun. Can't wait to hear about that. But I'm probably going to end up just doing mountain lion, maybe heading over to California and doing some over-the-counter stuff, a bear, doing some turkey hunting next spring. But I don't have anything planned for myself this fall, so as of yet, but things can change. So
yeah, it's still a lot of time left, and I'm sure you'll find out some friend of yours drew a great tag that you can tag along with. And it's great to have a company that's so dedicated to hunting, and the partnership that you guys have formed with the four of you. It's obvious you guys are taking this very seriously, and look forward to sharing here in your future. And we'll have to keep the listeners here updated on new stuff that comes out. And I just appreciate you being on today, and wish you the best of success this summer and the rest of this fall.
Thank you, Jay. Same to you. It was good talking to you. I really appreciate being on the podcast.
All right, buddy. You take care and have a good day, okay? God bless you.
You too.
Well, that was a great episode with Nicolai with Deadeye Outfitters, and I want to thank them for stepping up and being one of the sponsors for the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. I look forward over the next few months of forming a partnership and a relationship with them, and I like their products and look forward to seeing all the new stuff that they have coming. And if you haven't been on their Instagram page, go to Deadeye Outfitters on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. They've got great content on their Instagram page, and you have 50,000 followers, and it's obvious that they're doing things right, and I'm excited to have them on as a sponsor of the podcast. And we're going to be adding a few additional sponsors here, and I just want to thank all the listeners for your support. And it's humbling, the support that I get from you. If you have any questions, comments, or things that you'd like to see on the podcast, you can reach me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Feel free to send me an email. And I appreciate all the Facebook and Instagram messages as well, and just the great support from you guys. Make sure you get out there to buy your Arizona Super Big Game Raffle tickets for the animals, and hopefully you'll win a hunt. And those are very special hunts. Darn, I have been fortunate to guide several of them on the sheep hunt 3 years, and the turkey winner last year, and it's just a great time. It's a great way to support the state of Arizona. And until next time, guys, God bless. Have a great 4th of July. Thanks for listening to the J. Scott Outdoors Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing Podcast, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today.